As I walked alone down the dark, empty street, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I could feel someone's eyes on me, watching my every move. I quickened my pace, trying to shake off the eerie feeling that was creeping over me. I had just finished my late shift at work and decided to take a shortcut through the old abandoned warehouse. It was a route I had taken many times before, but tonight it felt different. The streets seemed darker, the shadows longer, and the wind was howling like an angry beast. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the empty warehouse. My heart raced as I hesitated, debating whether to continue through or turn back. But I needed to get home, and the warehouse was the quickest way. I stepped cautiously into the eerie building, my heart thumping against my chest. My footsteps echoed through the empty warehouse, sending shivers down my spine. I could feel my palms getting clammy and my breathing becoming shallow. Just as I was about to reach the other end of the warehouse, I heard a faint whisper. It sounded like my name being called. I froze, my whole body trembling with fear. I called out, thinking it could have been my imagination, but there was no reply. Just the sound of my own racing heart. I continued on, my mind playing tricks on me and my nerves shot. That's when I saw it. A figure, hiding in the shadows. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. It was tall and gaunt, with a pale face and sunken eyes. I couldn't make out any features. It was like a silhouette in the darkness. My instinct screamed at me to run, to get as far away as possible. But I was rooted to the spot, unable to move. The figure stepped closer, its footsteps silent on the concrete floor. I could feel its cold breath on my neck and could smell the stench of death. With one swift movement, the figure grabbed me by the shoulders and whispered in my ear, "You should have never come here." The sheer terror that filled me was suffocating. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, I couldn't even think. My mind went blank as the figure dragged me into the shadows, and that's the last thing I remember before waking up in my bed, covered in sweat and breathing heavily. It was all just a nightmare, I told myself. But then I saw it. A deep scratch mark on my shoulder, as if someone had physically grabbed me. From that day on, I never took that shortcut through the abandoned warehouse again. And I never could shake off the feeling that the figure was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim.
I never believed in the supernatural. Ghosts, monsters, and witches were just figments of people's imaginations, exaggerated stories to scare us. But that all changed when I moved into my new apartment. It was a quaint little place, with wooden floors and large windows that let in just the right amount of natural light. I was excited to finally have a place of my own, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. But as soon as I stepped foot inside, a chill ran down my spine. The first few weeks were peaceful. I settled in and got used to the creaks and groans of an old building. That's when strange things started happening. I would wake up in the middle of the night to find my furniture rearranged. Despite living alone. Sometimes I would hear whispers and footsteps in the hallway, but when I checked, no one was there. I started to question my sanity, but then the nightmares started. They were so vivid and unsettling that I could never shake off the feeling of dread even when I woke up. In my dreams, I would see a woman, her face twisted in agony, beckoning me to follow her. She would lead me to a dark room and disappear with an ear-piercing scream. Every night, I was plagued by this recurring nightmare. As weeks turned into months, I became more and more paranoid. I installed cameras in every room, hoping to catch any unusual activity, but the footage showed nothing. I even consulted a psychiatrist, thinking it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. One night, I woke up with the same sense of unease. As I lay in bed, I heard a faint sound coming from my closet. It sounded like scratching, as if someone was trying to get out. My heart racing, I reached for the doorknob and slowly opened the closet. And there she was, the woman from my nightmares, staring back at me with empty eyes. I screamed and ran out of my apartment, not stopping until I was in the safety of my car. I never went back. I couldn't explain it, but I was convinced that the woman was not of this world. And she wanted me to join her. To this day, I refuse to set foot in that apartment. I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread and fear even though I know it's only a building. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I can still hear her whispers, calling me back to that dark room, and I know I made the right decision. Whether it was a ghost or my imagination, I never want to find out. Some things are better left unanswered.
It was a dark and stormy night, the kind that sends shivers down your spine. I was on my way home from work, driving down a deserted highway. The rain was coming down hard, making it difficult to see the road ahead. But I knew this road like the back of my hand, so I wasn't too worried. As I was driving, I noticed something moving in the distance. It was a figure, walking on the side of the road. I immediately slowed down, my heart racing with fear and curiosity. As I got closer, I realized it was a woman, wearing a tattered white dress and walking barefoot in the pouring rain. I couldn't understand why anyone would be out in this weather, let alone walking alone on a deserted highway. I pulled over and rolled down my window, asking if she needed any help. She turned to me, her face hidden in the shadows, and simply nodded. Something about her sent chills down my spine, but I couldn't leave her out in the storm. I unlocked my passenger door, and she climbed in, still not saying a word. As I continued to drive, I couldn't help but glance over at her. Her clothes were soaking wet, and her hair was tangled and matted. But what struck me the most were her eyes. They seemed sad, not menacing like I initially thought. I decided to strike up a conversation to distract her from the eerie atmosphere. "Where are you headed?" I asked. She looked at me with a hint of gratitude in her eyes and explained that her car had broken down a few miles back, and she had been walking in hopes of finding help. We decided to go back to where she had left her car and see if we could get it started. As we approached her stranded vehicle, the rain began to let up, and the storm subsided. I opened the hood and got to work, and that's when I saw it, a gleaming knife and some blood stains in the back of her car. Panic surged through me, and I hesitated for a moment, but I couldn't bring myself to confront her about it. I fixed her car in silence, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had discovered. When the engine finally roared to life, she thanked me profusely and invited me to her house as a token of gratitude. My eyes flickered to the back of her car, and my fear intensified. Politely declining, she insisted I should go with her. I mumbled something about having urgent plans and quickly got into my car. The sense of relief at escaping the situation was overshadowed by the disturbing discovery in her vehicle. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly avoided something sinister, and the image of that knife and blood stains haunted my thoughts long after that dark and stormy night.